my name is Lizzie and I'm a first year Jet from England. I teach at a high-level international school. Today I'm going to tell you about my lesson on metaphors and similes.
Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another Real ALT Lessons video. We have Lizzie with us today. Welcome to the channel, Lizzie.
Hello.
First year on Jet here, and she's actually neighbours with me. Lizzie, her school situation is very interesting. She is at an extremely high level school. It's extremely high level across the board, right? Not just English.
Yeah, I don't think it's not the highest level, like, you know, those like super science high schools that some people get placed at. It's not one of those, but it's pretty academically high across the board. It's known for its English program.
Why don't you start us off by telling us about the range of classes you teach, how many students, how long is the lesson, what years, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. Just give us the whole rundown.
I teach junior high school and senior high school, so it's ages 12 to 18. The confusing thing is they go like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth year instead of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
So it's like Scotland.
Yeah, it's a secondary school like the UK, but the numbers are different.
Yeah.
All the classes are 50 minutes long. They're all the same. And I don't co-teach with my other ALT, although there is another one. And then within that, they're put into 4 levels of English.
That's kind of unique within itself that your classes are organised by level.
Yeah.
Because I think for the majority of schools, kids just teach in their homeroom class, and then you end up with very mixed levels in each class.
And I think it's one of the only subjects they do that for. So confusingly, the top level are D level, and that's essentially they're basically fluent. So a lot of those kids have grown up in like Australia or America, or a couple of them even in England, which is nice. No Scots yet, but like
One day.
one day maybe. Or they're half, like one of their parents is an expat, or they've studied abroad for like a year. My job is to help keep their English at like a functioning level, essentially. Below that you have C and B class, and they are like 20 to 22 students in a class. Essentially, like the younger they are, obviously the lower the ability. By the time you get to senior high school, like you can have a conversation with some of them. A-level classes are really small, and they're like 9 to 12 students. They have come from countries where they don't speak Japanese or English, so a lot of them are Indian or Taiwanese or like Korean or Chinese.
Is your school considered an international school?
It's considered an international school, but it's still on the Japanese exam and curriculum system. It's partly international, I think, because they have like translators who work with the English speaking and Chinese speaking kids in the normal lessons. Also, like, no one tells me this. This is literally just from me like watching and being like, okay.
Yeah.
So I could be completely wrong about like how
everything.
Everything.
Don't watch this video. This video is rubbish.
But my guess is it's international in the sense that they provide support to international students, and they have a very good English speaking program, and they're like a lot of students go and study abroad. And
you mentioned you have a co-ALT. Are you guys doing the same thing but like splitting the classes, or do you have different responsibilities?
No, we have different classes. So there's 2.5 ALTs at my school.
2.5, okay.
Two of us are full-time, and then one comes 2 days a week.
Sure.
And we all have responsibility for different classes.
So you're not ever like collaborating or anything? That's too bad you can't like share lesson plans and stuff. That would make life so easy.
No, like sometimes game ideas usually, or project ideas is what we will swap or like brainstorm, but with the high level kids we do books.
I know your co-ALT that's full time because she joined the same year as me, but I remember one time she told me when we were catching up, this is very early in my time in Japan, she's like, oh yeah, we just finished like this chapter of the Hunger Games, we were talking about the themes and blah blah, and I was just like, interesting. We just learned body parts. This is a shoulder. So it's like, oh my god, the little difference in level, the things you must have to consider as well. Like, I don't think I could teach a school like that because my English is like knowing the rules and stuff. Like,
I do know that one of the reasons I got allocated to that school is because my degree is in English literature.
I figured.
I know that
makes sense. So one thing I'm wondering is how many lessons do you plan a week? Because I'm imagining with all those varying classes, it's not one lesson covers all.
Nope. I have 16 classes a week, I'd say I have to make about 8-ish plans for that. Roughly, maybe.
That's wild to me, because for me, I have a first year class, a third year class, and my night school. I plan 3 lessons a week, and that's a lot for me.
Different teachers like different things. Generally, by level, you can start to reuse some things. Like if we're going to play games, I'll probably do the same games. But then the books and the projects are obviously different.
Sure. So, what is the lesson that you're going to talk to us about today?
It's on metaphors and similes.
Okay, there we go. You've not seen that in this series yet, have you?
Specifically, this one was planned for my ichinensei, 12 and 13.
12, 13 years old. Cool. Oh yeah, because that's first year, as in first year
First year
junior
of
high school.
But I will use essentially the same thing for my 5th years who are second year of senior.
This is definitely a lesson aimed at a higher level school. So why don't you talk us through it beginning to end? How do you run the class?
Well, I mean, with these classes, there's usually a bit of chat when I go in. And they're like, Lizzie, hi!
Or just like small talk and
yeah,
stuff.
So like, how's their day been? Like, how was their weekend? That kind of thing. So I start with like, what is an image? And they all look at me like, is that a trick question? And I'm like, no, seriously, it's not a trick question. Just what does image mean in English? And sometimes they'll shout out. Sometimes like I might pick on someone. Sometimes they'll put their hands up. They're pretty well behaved. So like, I don't really mind how they do that. So hopefully they say something like photograph or a picture, or like my favorite was, it's like a picture but it's not a picture. And then I'll ask them like, do you know what another similar word in English is that sounds the same? And so far they've all said like, oh, imagination. And I'm like, great, that is where it comes from. Imagination is to picture things. And because we're doing books, I will say like, so you know, when you're reading, you're picturing what's going on in your head. And I'll talk about the fact that authors will use different tools to help you picture the story the way that they want you to picture it. And then I'll often ask them about like a film they saw where they were surprised by the character, like, I don't know.
Oh, looking different from
yeah,
how they
looking
imagined
different,
reading it.
like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Hunger
yeah.
Games or Harry Potter or something. And then I'll say like some of these tools, because my plan is to go on and teach more of these tools, but for this lesson I'll say are similes and metaphors, and I'll ask them like, does anyone know what those are? And some of them do. So I'll sort of say they're comparison images. So when you're describing something and you don't know what it looks like, you use something where you do know what it looks like, or you're pretty sure that the people reading it are gonna know what it looks like. So I'll sort of say, imagine if, you know, if all my hair was in my hat, like, and I said my hair is like straw, what would that tell you? And they'll say stuff like, oh, it's blonde. And then they'll look at me and I'm like, and? And anything
Keep
else?
going,
Like,
keep
is
going.
it wet? And they're like, no, it's dry. And then someone will say it's straight, or like, and then they'll look a little bit hesitant because I use my own example, and they're like, oh, straw's not always very neat, but your hair is neat. And I'm like, no, it's chill, it's fine. Like, you just use the word straw and the people can picture it. And then I'll say, oh, what if I said my hair is like silk? And they're like, oh, it's different. And you can kind of see the like
The wheels
connection
turning
being
in their
made.
head, yeah.
They're like, oh! I'm like, yes, excellent. Because essentially what I want to teach these kids to do eventually is to analyze images. And these are the building blocks I'm starting with. So that's the eventual goal. Yeah, so once I've sort of done that, and then I'll say, so that's a simile, and the other way of writing a simile is to say my hair is as dry as straw. And I might explain that all that does is draw your attention to what you should be focusing on. So you could say my hair is smooth as silk, but yellow as straw. Like, you can have two different images to put together. But inevitably at this point, some kid goes, why don't they just say you've got dry blonde hair? And I'm like, well, to be fair, usually they do. But I'm using quite simple examples, so it doesn't overcomplicate. And then I get them to play like a little activity.
So up until this point, just talking to them, how long does that take?
I'm talking at them 10 to 15 minutes,
10 to 15
depending on
minutes.
how much like chat back I get.
So is it quite conversive?
With this class, yes. And I'm also like writing on the board, and sometimes I'll like wait for them because I know they know the answer and they like don't want to give it to me,
Yeah,
and
so
I'll just wait.
Oh,
and
you'll
be
just
like,
sit like,
Masa, come on, like, this is like slightly off topic, but like when they've written the worksheets and I'm asking them to tell me what they've written, and they're like, and I'm like, I can see your writing.
Yeah.
Please.
Sometimes I'll hear people, like everyone will be muttering the
Muttering
answer between each other, and I'm like, we all know, you all know. Someone just fucking say it.
To say it. And then they'll have 5 to 8 minutes to do like an activity like in pairs or in groups, depending on how many of them are there and how they're seated. where I'll say, okay, choose a family member, then compare them to a food, like using this pattern that's on the board. And they'll talk about it, and usually there's a bit of, why a food? Like, I can't think of a food. And I'll also be like, I'm not gonna go and check, like you can make something up.
Are they just talking to each other? There's no writing?
No writing for this. Thinking about it, if I was adapting it to a lower level, I probably would ask them to write it down. That gives them a bit more confidence to actually do something instead of just sit there going, oh. And then we'll go around and they'll tell me. So we've had like, I had one kid be like, what's a food that everyone hates? I was like, who are you describing? So apparently her cousins like broccoli. So.
It's impressive to me that your kids can use their imaginations so well, because I find that even with simple tasks that I know that my kids have the English for, as soon as it involves anything creative, they freeze up. So it's really cool that your kids can do that.
This class in particular is pretty good at that. I think because they're a bit younger.
Right.
And also, like, they were 12 and they went straight into having lessons with an ALT. When I do this with my higher levels, I do have that issue of them not being creative, because they've spent 5 years in a Japanese system and not all of them have
that mindset.
Yeah, particularly the ones who've like studied their way into this class as well. Often you get that issue, and when that happens, that's when I would be like, write it down or come up with one together, or like take the pressure off the individual.
Yeah, so that's 5 to 8 minutes.
Yeah, and then like 5 to 10 minutes to feedback, because often there's chat depending on how quick they are, like how much time you've got left. Like you can chuck another like, oh, pick a friend and compare them to an animal. Like you can give them a couple of these if they're quick at it. And then I have maybe 20 minutes left of this class at this point. And then I would go back to metaphors. And I'd be like, it's the same, it's just that when you're reading it, we don't use the words like or as. So I'd say my hair is straw, given that you know I'm not a scarecrow. You get the same image, but you're just not using those words. And I'll also kind of say it's also a little bit more like intense or direct, because you haven't got those. And I'll sort of say, you have probably all used metaphors, and they're all like, eh? And I'm like, well, how many of you when you're running have said, oh, I'm dying? And they're like, oh! You know, you're just saying, I feel like I'm dying, but you're making it shorter and you're making it more powerful. And then at this point, this is where it's probably less relatable, because I'm about to get them to pick metaphors and similes from the book that they're reading and analyze them on little posters together. An example I used was a character's sweat trickled down his face like tears. And I was like, what word could you use instead of tears? Like in groups, you have 3 minutes to brainstorm, and I'll tell them like, you can be ridiculous, like it doesn't have to, you're not actually writing the book. And so they came up with stuff like sweat like onsen, or like sweat like soup was my favorite. And like we had all these words, and I wrote them all on the board, and then we went through them, and I was like, okay, like what impression does this one give? And they'd be like, oh, heat, or like if it's a waterfall, it's a lot of it. And like, so they're starting to get the idea about how different words give you
like I'm
different
learning.
images. I worked hard on this. Okay.
Cool, so then after that they just need to find their own and
after
repeat.
that, find their own and repeat the activity, again in groups.
And that's it?
Then that's it, yeah, they might have to finish that for homework. Or I'd get them to feedback and present. Usually like I'm running out of time by that point. The higher the level, the longer they take to complete the task, because the task is more complicated. And then like the lower the level, you need more stuff, because they get bored. Because it is simple. So like with the lower levels, you're like, another game, really? How long do I
fully get that.
But what's nice is because these classes are my curriculum, I can be like, cool, okay, we're gonna do that.
So yeah, thank you very much for joining me here today. If you guys enjoyed this video or found it useful, then please give it a like. And if you want to see more, then please subscribe. I will see you guys next week.